Hello and welcome. I'm Brian Zaff, the founder and CEO of Flight Financial. And with me today is Eli Marx-Kahn, the founder and chief wellness officer of Holistic Learning. Welcome, Eli.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Really appreciate you taking time to do this. It'd be great to start if you could just tell us a little bit about what Holistic Learning is doing and, the story for how you got here.
Sure. I think maybe I'll start with the problem that we recognized, and then I can sort of get into what we're doing to try and solve that problem. Um, so about 6 months into the COVID pandemic, so around September of 2020, my co-founder Kush Patel and I were just sort of reflecting on what is now probably a decade-long trend in the world of secondary education, um, a trend towards promoting test-taking proficiency in schools without any real consideration for the overall well-being of students. Um, and as far as we're concerned, it's not only important for students to be able to pass their tests, it's also important for them to be able to manage stress and develop the skills to navigate the professional world and generally be well equipped to make important life decisions of various sorts. And as we were sort of surveying the landscape of educational support, we saw very little in the way of a sort of whole student approach to academic support. Almost everything was focused on, you know, writing proficiency and chemistry and math and so on and so forth. And we thought it would be great to try and build a single destination online for students to get access to tools not only for academic success, but also personal and professional growth. And so we spent a number of months brainstorming and fast forward to 2022, what we now have is holistic learning, which is a one-stop shop for academic, personal, and professional growth. Basically, a single destination for students to get access to a wide range of services that can support them in all of their endeavors. Importantly, it provides them with a lot of tools that high school simply can't provide. So some of the services we provide are one-on-one tutoring, learning strategy sessions, life skills workshops, career seminars, meditation and wellness courses, and a number of others as well. So we're sort of just trying to see students as whole people and also trying to recognize that, at the end of the day, one of the best places to start if you want to create a better world is with young people, helping them establish good habits, helping them realize what's important to them. They are going to be, the future of our society. And so we want to support them as best we can. And that's really what we're doing at Holistic Learning.
That's great. And it sounds like you guys really have a very mission driven company that's, very, I would say, well aligned with the trends that we're seeing kind of, post COVID-19, where people really are kind of reevaluating old ways of doing things and trying to not just focus on, test results or other metrics of achievement, but looking at kind of what's more personally fulfilling and kind of sets them up for longer term sustainable success.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, as we may discuss further later on, this project was really born of the pandemic. There were a lot of indicators of students really struggling during the pandemic, and really what the pandemic did was beyond sort of adding stressors to the already stressful lives of students, it uncovered a lot of the problems in our education system. And with the teachers and the schools, and education policymakers and so on, they did all that they could. But ultimately, I think what was revealed is that students need more than school alone can provide them. So I certainly hope that we are part of that solution. And so far it seems like we're well on our way.
Very cool. So, usually I'll ask guests on this program kind of what impact COVID-19 had on their business, but it sounds really like you guys were born of the pandemic. So, as we've started to, I don't necessarily want to say come out of the pandemic because there's still obviously, high numbers of cases, but as things have started to kind of stabilize a little bit, has that had an impact on your business or it's really just you kind of took the principles, from operating in that COVID-19 environment, and they've kind of fueled you as you've gone.
Yeah, I think the perfect timing or the perfect timeline, which was not really achievable for us, but what would have been ideal is if we had somehow been able to see the pandemic coming. We perhaps could have, built this online platform that could have been utilized thoroughly throughout the pandemic. But we had the idea during the pandemic, and we spent a lot of time building a team, building an MVP, doing a beta launch, et cetera. We did all that sort of throughout the course of the pandemic. And you're right, we're not out of the woods yet. But with a sort of light at the end of the tunnel, or so it seems, one of the challenges we faced is that as we try to build a network of partner schools who will grant access to our platform to all their students, there are some concerns about sort of continued online activities. And while an online delivery modality is really the only one that makes sense for us, we're definitely having to address the concerns of educators and administrators who say, students have spent already too much time online. We want them to be getting out into the world, into the physical world rather than the virtual world. And that's definitely something we're having to contend with. But, one thing is high school, I should say teenage screen use, technology usage during the pandemic almost doubled from 4 to about 7 hours and per day for American teenagers. And one of the beautiful things about having an online platform is that it can captivate students in a way that certain in-person activities really can't. And so we see a lot of our content as a sort of productive alternative to a lot of the social media platforms that students are spending hours and hours a day on. So that's one of the solutions to the problem of being an online platform in, perhaps a decreasingly online educational world.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I've got a follow-up question on that, but I guess one question that kind of precedes it is, so are you guys using a budget and a forecast to kind of help you, as you go along here with your business?
Yeah, so it's it's always changing, and forecasting has been a bit hard thus far, just because we don't have super solid revenue just yet, and so doing we've done very conservative estimates and forecasting, we've done liberal estimates and forecasting, and that gives us a sense for sort of where we might be in 3, 6, 9, and 12 months. But it has certainly been hard to forecast. And um, I'd say the main sort of the main concern for us has been ensuring that our runway is long enough to sustain us into the post revenue phase. And with the business model that we have, and with the company structure that we have, and with us as founders, Kush Patel and myself, not taking any income yet,
Mm.
we've been able to keep our costs pretty fixed, which has allowed us to calculate our runway pretty reliably. And so, yeah, it's been tough to do a lot of forecasting, but our primary concern is just staying above water.
Completely understand that. And I guess this leads into my kind of follow up question. So you talk a lot about like the uncertainty and how challenging it is to forecasts. I guess what has your approach been, especially too in light of the fact that a lot of education administrators are calling for like a return to more classroom based learning, and the benefits associated with that. How are you, given the uncertainty around that, how do you kind of forecast out what revenue might look like in that climate?
It's a great question. And, I would say while we are definitely dealing with that concern from administrators that, a lot of students are wanting to get offline rather than continuing online, while that is certainly the case, there's also uh, a lot of interest in the platform, a lot of recognition that the versatility and flexibility of an online platform is sort of unrivaled with in-person services. So, just to give you an example, a lot of students can't afford to be shuttled around, or I should say, families can't afford to shuttle their kids around to various appointments, a tutoring appointment, and then a college and career counseling appointment, and then perhaps, some work with a learning strategist or a wellness coach. It's just, it adds up. It's costly, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of time. And so I think administrators do certainly recognize that there's value in having a single online destination that can be accessed from anywhere, that can grant students access to all of those various services. So with that said, you know, we've done our best to forecast realistically, recognizing that when we do prospecting and ultimately try and convert schools, bring them on board as partners, recognizing that the yield is fairly low, single digits. We've sort of forecasted forecasted considering that we ultimately will have to take time, effort, energy, and money to really build a large and sustainable network of partner schools. So to answer your question directly, we just try and keep our estimates conservative as much as possible, and recognize that at our stage, even having a small handful of partner schools is a huge success for us.
And I would completely agree with that. And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of your value proposition. I've got two girls ages 8 and 10, and just the sheer number of extracurriculars and activities and things that they need. It's like having a one-stop shop like this where you can do it from the comfort of your home. It's definitely valuable. So yeah, I think you guys are definitely, you've got something here. I did want to follow up on another point you'd made about trying to make sure you've got enough runway. So have you guys self-financed this business, or have you taken on outside funds?
Yeah, so we did initially self-finance. We were just using savings to sort of build the first iteration of our website, to get legal filings in order, to do some initial hiring, and then we were lucky enough to be able to do some 2 rounds of sort of friends and family fundraising, and so we've given up about 7% of the company to family primarily, and that's really enabled us to pursue the project as we have. And frankly, yeah, I think it would have been very difficult to put as much into it as we have been able to, if we hadn't had that financing, and we probably would have had to work at least part time otherwise. And so it's been great to have the support of family.
I completely agree with that, and I would say too, being able to take on family financing or self-financing for a bit, rather than having to rely on institutional capital. Like you said, you haven't had to give up too much equity in the business at this stage, but it's really kind of fueled the growth you've been able to realize so far.
Yeah, it has. And at this stage, we actually recently had to consider whether we wanted to go the route of institutional fundraising right away, or whether we wanted to see if we could really get off the ground without that. So what we've decided to do, and this took quite a bit of digging to really make it possible, but we've decided to actually take a business loan from a local foundation where I live in Colorado. That it's a sort of enterprise fund for entrepreneurs who have trouble getting favorable interest rates from traditional institutions like banks. And so, whereas a lot of banks and online lenders are often charging upwards of 10%, in some cases, 40, 50, 60% APR, which is just completely unsustainable. We've we've managed to get a loan at a really low interest rate, well below inflation. So
Wow.
that's our sort of current approach to try and extend our runway a bit and see if we can't retain equity while building the business. And at some point, I think it would be great to have a strategic partner in the form of an angel investor who really knows the industry, who's built something in the ed tech space before, and that's something we're certainly open to. But yeah, for now, if we can keep 93% of the company in our hands, and have the flexibility that affords us, then that would be really awesome. as business owners.
Definitely. And I think you made an interesting point too there about when you do decide to take on outside funding, making sure that it's intelligent capital that you're bringing in that can really not just provide money, but can really, connect some of the other dots for you in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really interesting sort of navigating the space of entrepreneurs and investors and so on, not knowing anything about VC coming into this, not knowing, anyone in the ed tech industry really. It's been pretty cool to see how building an MVP and just talking to people can really help establish a network of trusted advisors and friends and trusted colleagues. It's been quite an inspiring journey.
Definitely. And I guess I wanted to circle back. Since you guys did raise, kind of this business loan to help you out, what was the process that you went through with that? Like what kind of information did you have to provide? How long did it take?
Yeah, so the process is all but finalized. We should just be getting final word back early next week. But yeah, the really the process was fairly straightforward. It turned out so I wouldn't have known about this first of all if I hadn't gone to a bank and said, "Hey, we're actually interested in the loan." And had a banker that was nice enough to tell me, "Look, this might not work out because you're so new, but there's this foundation nearby that can really help you get off the ground." So that was the first important piece of information. And then as far as what we had to do, was actually a little bit complicated for us because we are an online platform and because we're not operating solely in the state of Colorado where I live.
Hmm.
We had to do some convincing right at, sort of from the get-go. We had to say, hey, look, we technically are a Delaware LLC. We technically have our services available to students nationwide, students in schools nationwide, but we are serving schools and students and families in the Colorado community. So that was sort of the first little bit of convincing that we had to do because it's technically a foundation that's meant to support Colorado businesses. And then beyond that, it was a pretty straightforward application process. We submitted an inquiry, we got a call, did some back and forth, and ultimately had to submit a business plan, had to submit some financial forecasts, and then soft credit pull and some basic information about the business was sort of all that did the trick.
Very cool. And did you guys kind of go through that process of putting together the projections and the application yourself, or did you have help that you leveraged with that?
Yeah, we did it ourselves. We did get some feedback. We had to sort of submit something of a pitch deck, and that we got a good bit of feedback on. But as far as the projections, yeah, we put them together ourselves based on the numbers that we've had so far, and we included in those projections sort of liberal and conservative estimates, recognizing that we don't have a lot of data points as of now.
Yep, that makes sense. And you mentioned that obviously this foundation, since they're based in the state of Colorado, wanted to know that you were also serving the local community. What kind of data did you provide them? Like, were you able to quantify that for them? Like, a certain amount of your revenues coming from Colorado students, or how did you make that case?
I think actually most of the convincing just came in the form of me saying, "Hey, look, I live in Fort Collins, and our first partner school is a Denver charter school." So that was a really important sort of, I guess, couple pieces of information for them just to see that I really have my roots here, and that we've got at least one client in Colorado as hundreds of students that are going to benefit from our services. So I think at that point they were able to feel confident that the funding, which is ultimately coming from the county, um, they were able to feel confident that that funding would really be supporting the people of Northern Colorado.
So you had enough social proof from that partnership to say, look, we're doing what we're telling you we are.
Exactly, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. So now that you've got the funds that you've raised from yourselves, from your friends and family, and now from this kind of benevolent organization, what is your approach to just managing your cash flow runway?
Yeah, so I think the primary objectives for us right now are one, establishing partnerships with other schools. That doesn't cost a whole lot because, frankly, it's really mostly my time making prospecting calls, following up with people, setting up meetings, and pitching left and right. That it's my time, which I'm currently not compensating myself for. But in addition, one of the big parts of our platform is this extensive and always growing library of animated videos on a wide range of topics. So everything from personal wellness development to professional development to college readiness, learning strategies, nutrition, and so on. We all of the sort of facets of the holistic learning model. We have videos in each of these categories, dozens and dozens of them, and so uh, that's that's something that we're able to predict pretty readily, the cost of animation. And it goes from brainstorming to scripting to hiring a voice artist and then sending the recording to our animator. And so we know that we like to produce a few videos per week. We know what our costs are, and so that's pretty easy to factor into our budget. One thing that has been difficult, is sort of just keeping track of the many different subscriptions that we now have. We've got Canva, we've got a contract with a PR firm, we've got HubSpot and Google Workspace, and so on and so forth. And so just keeping track of all of that, making sure that we're factoring it into our budgeting. That has definitely been a bit of a headache, and often takes up sort of more of our bandwidth than we would prefer.
So how do you guys, like you said, like what's your means for keeping track of all that? Is it a spreadsheet, or do you have, like accounting software that you're using? Is there somebody helping you with that?
So we have QuickBooks, which has been pretty helpful. We got that fairly recently, but up to that point, it was really just basically converting bank statements into spreadsheets, and
Oh,
making
wow.
and making visuals based on spreadsheets that could tell us, here's how much of our money is going towards these types of services, here's how much is going towards these types of services. And so it was pretty crude, I would say. QuickBooks has helped a lot. But we can certainly always use more resources when it comes to budgeting and forecasting.
Yep, gotcha. And I feel like we could probably spend hours talking on that topic alone.
Oh, I'm
But I know
sure.
we're I know we're coming up close to time here. I did want to give you a chance if there's any other kind of final takeaways or bits of advice you'd love to leave with the audience.
Sure. You know, Something that I really didn't expect, when I when we got started with marketing, is that the cost of marketing to individuals online can be pretty colossal. Especially if your conversions are poor, it's pretty easy to have, um, you know, certainly double-digit customer acquisition cost, easy to bleed into the triple digits, and that can be really intimidating, especially when marketing budget is small. And so, one of the things that's been really great for us is that we have a contract with this PR firm that um, basically allows us to send press releases out to journalists and bloggers and podcasters in the ed tech space, or and really anyone that covers education. um, we've been able to send out these press releases and get articles written about us and published online, at online outlets that are very credible, more credible perhaps than we are as a new company. And that's sort of created a lot of momentum for us, that we otherwise wouldn't have had. And so, some we pay $300 a month for this PR company contract, and it gets us access to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of press contacts, and it gives us the ability to do big press wire releases, and so that that has been a really valuable tool that I didn't expect to come across. But the other thing too with that is beyond the sort of marketing potential there, it's been hugely helpful for our SEO. We were
Hmm.
ranking like, I think our average search position for, if you just search the company name Holistic Learning, our average search position for the first few months was like 180 to 200, which is terrible. No one's
Oh,
ever going to
wow.
find us that way. And we started doing these press releases. We started getting these blogs and articles published about us. And within a month and a half, our average search position was 14, and we're like this close to crawling on the first page, which is just great. So that's something that's been much more budget friendly than just paying for Facebook or Google ads. And I definitely would encourage anyone who's trying to get a business off the ground, trying to build credibility, to look into something like that. Um, and then Gosh, yeah, just general advice I would say is talk to as many people as possible, pitch as much as you can, and it's something I'm still working on every day. But I've realized, especially in the past few weeks, actually, that conversations like this one, conversations with other entrepreneurs, really will get you far, because having, as many eyes on your project as possible is one of the best ways to make sure that it sort of takes the form that it needs to take in order to be successful.
I completely agree with that, right? Nobody succeeds alone, and it's great to be able to leverage the expertise of others. Well, oh, sorry, go ahead, Eli.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well,
I'm fully with you.
yeah, so Eli, I really appreciate the time. I think this has been a great conversation. If people want to learn more about your holistic learning, what's the best way to reach out?
Well, you can certainly check out our website, holisticlearning.co. And if you want to get in touch with me, you're welcome to email me. My email is eli@holisticlearning.co. I would love to hear from you. If you have ideas, if you want to collaborate, I'm certainly open.
That sounds great. Well, Eli, I wish you and holistic learning all the best.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, take care.
You too.
What a cool conversation that was with Eli. Here's a few takeaways that I had from the discussion. The first takeaway I wanted to call out, Eli mentioned the challenge of budgeting and forecasting because he doesn't know what his revenue is. It's relatively uncertain for him right now while he's trying to get his business up and running. And this is a key area where a fractional CFO service, like Flight Financial, can really help you think through different drivers for your business, for the revenue, and really help make your budgeting and forecasting more tangible and thus more actionable in an uncertain time, like when you're first getting started, or even in an uncertain period when something like COVID-19 happens and revenues are just uncertain. The next thing that Eli spoke about, I wanted to call out here, is that they recently took on debt financing and they handled that process themselves. And while it sounded like it went relatively smooth for them, it was also a time consuming process that required a lot of information on their business. And this is time that as a founder you could better spend trying to reach out to new customers or new partners and really drive revenue and growth for your business. So it's a great area where a fractional CFO service like Flight Financial could help you navigate through the process and also ensure that your financial statements are lender ready. And the last thing Eli spoke about that I wanted to touch on here is the fact that they recently started using QuickBooks software themselves. And prior to that, they had to take bank statements and manually convert those to Excel format and then manually manipulate those spreadsheets in order to get data in a usable format for their business. And while this is certainly a fine way to start out, and it's certainly cost effective, it's also time consuming, and because it's very manual, it's also error prone. And if you're not an accountant setting your books up in QuickBooks, you really don't know for sure that everything's being handled properly. So it's a great area for a fractional CFO service like Flight Financial to come on and help ensure that your bookkeeping is being done correctly in QuickBooks or whatever accounting system you want to use, and also to free up your time to focus on driving value for your business. Well, that's all I have for now. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Eli. Until next time, I'm Brian Zaff, the founder and CEO of Flight Financial. Take care.